Alright, Meat Shields, so imagine if an entire class of 3rd graders just got up and disappeared in the middle of the night. Sounds like a security nightmare, right? But it looks like they all vanished without a trace though, and the police still haven't found any answers even after an entire month of searching. But the truth is more horrifying than they could possibly imagine. These people have no idea that they're secretly being attacked by a parasitic witch who needs their energy to survive. And she's turning everyone in town into mindless zombies who won't stop until their target is dead. So we're here to break down the mistakes made, what you should do, and how to beat Aunt Gladys in weapons. Alright, I think it's safe to say that after tonight, this town is never going to be the same. Our story begins 2 years ago, one ordinary Wednesday morning in the quiet town of Maybrook. As the kids arrived at school, the new 3rd grade teacher, Miss Scandy, walked into her classroom only to find out that all of her students had gone missing, and what happened next was so bizarre that it could never be explained. At exactly 2:17 the night before, all 17 kids left their homes and took off Naruto running into the darkness as if they were under some kind of spell. The police learned what they could from the parents' alarms and doorbell cameras, but no matter how hard they searched, they couldn't really figure out where the kids actually went. Only one boy named Alex showed up for class, but he couldn't tell them anything about what happened to the other kids. Neither could Miss Gandy, and after a whole month of investigating, they weren't any closer to figuring it out. But soon enough, something was about to happen that would change this town forever. Okay, the police in this town must not be doing their jobs because there should be no way that 17 kids have been missing for an entire month and they still don't have any leads. Like, as soon as they realized just how many kids had disappeared and how strange the connections between all of these cases were, they realistically should have reached out to the FBI for some backup, like pronto, because this is a lot more than just your average investigation. It looks like they've already tried using scent dogs, and I'm a bit surprised that this didn't turn up better results. All you'd need is something with the child's scent, like a shirt, blanket, pillowcase, and the dogs could track them for miles, especially within the first 24. Their specialized noses let them follow the trail of skin cells and sweat that a person leaves behind as they walk, allowing the police to see where the trail leads, or if the missing kids ever crossed paths. And here's the thing, since these kids are only in the 3rd grade, it's not like they could have gone very far in the span of one night. Another thing that they don't seem to be using well is the doorbell camera and CCTV footage. They should be collecting this from all over town, not just the affected houses, and trying to put together an area of where the kids might have been going, or if there were any suspicious vehicles in the area at the time. Now, if this were a real case, then the information would have been spread nationwide within the first 72 hours of the kids going missing. But after a whole month with no sightings or even bodies popping up, this could mean that they're still somewhere nearby. And if someone is keeping 17 kids in one place, there's probably going to be a couple signs. The first thing that they would need is a big food supply, so the police should look for any break-ins at the local grocery stores, or unusual bulk food purchases of the prepper-type supplies. They're also going to generate a lot of waste and need a lot of water, so the increased garbage and utility bills should be another sign. There's even going to be a noticeable buildup of CO2 wherever they're being kept, so the police can use drones equipped with CO2 sniffers to check the area for any unusual spikes. With all of that, these kids should have been found by now, but the truth about this case is stranger than they could ever imagine. Alright gang, I think we can all agree that if these kids had something cooler to do, then they wouldn't be Naruto running off into the dark. I don't know if you guys saw my last video, but the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles have made their way into Raid, and it's litty. I mean, look at this joint. Raid, Shadow Legends, and Paramount have teamed up for the ultimate crossover. The Turtles, April, and the Evil Shredder are all there. From now until November 13th, there'll be champions available in one of the best video games ever. Leonardo, Donatello, Raphael, and Michelangelo are all there for this Cowabunga crossover. But kick off your collection with Michelangelo by logging on for 7 days starting August 21st to unlock this legendary turtle. His moves are so sick. He's got crazy trash-talking taunts that are hilarious, but make sure you start collecting by October 30th. Plus, you can unlock Donatello, who acts as a support class to heal allies, and challenge Shredder in the event dungeon to earn an exclusive Chronophage gear set. And if you collect all 6 TMNT Champions, you get a special bonus award. And no, No, unfortunately, it's not pizza. If you haven't already logged on to get the TMNT characters, what are you waiting for? They won't be around forever, and you don't want to miss out. Scan the QR code on screen or go to the link in the description to get started. You'll immediately get a huge starter pack with an epic champion Anax from the Undead Horde's faction land. You'll get another starter pack after reaching level 15 that includes epic Fayne, but that's not all. New players can also pick one promo code out of 5 for a legendary of your choice. You get to choose between Green Warden Rurark, Alice the Wanderer, Tunarak, Thowlin Foulbeard, and legendary son Wukong. And come find me in the game under the name How to Beat. Join my clan, the Gnocchi Boys. Yeah. Justine. Before reopening for class, the school officials decide to host a big meeting for all of the town's parents. And that's where we find Miss Gandy sitting in the front row. She's trying to fly under the radar, but it isn't long before an upset father stands up and starts demanding answers. Taking the podium, she tries her best to convince them that she's innocent, but the crowd eventually gets so rowdy that they have to shut the meeting down. Instead of going home, Justine heads straight to the liquor store for 2 bottles of cheap vodka, where she gets a call from a hidden number telling her to watch her back. On her way out, she notices a pickup truck that seems like it could be watching her, and checks to make sure that she isn't being followed when she arrives back at her house. She's in the kitchen pouring herself a glass when she hears a ring at the doorbell, but when she calls out to see who's there, the visitor does not respond. Nervous, she takes a look through the peephole and even checks out the front window, but the prankster is nowhere to be found. She's just about to let her guard down when another series of loud knocks makes her jump with fright. And furious, she grabs a can of pepper spray and rushes outside to confront them, but when she gets there, all she finds is the word witch splashed across the side of her car in red paint. In the morning, Justine learns that she's being put on leave from her job until the whole situation calms down. Curious, she asks if she can talk to Alex, but the principal says that the kid is already traumatized enough and tells Justine that he wants her to leave the boy alone. Later that night, she meets up with her ex-boyfriend Paul at the bar, who is a local cop and has been investigating the case of the missing kids. He tries his best to give her some advice, but she's convinced that the entire town is turning against her and there's nothing he can say to change her mind. As the conversation goes on, Paul mentions that he and his wife Donna are splitting up, and it doesn't take long before he's convinced to have a drink. Well, the next thing that he knows, he's waking up back at Justine's place with a nasty hangover, and it's already time to get back to work. Alright, Justine thinks that everyone in this town is turning against her, and she's right, but you know what's not gonna help? Spending every night getting absolutely hammered and hooking up with her married ex. You see, the reason why it seems like everyone in this town has it out for her is because people are naturally wired to create meaning out of uncertainty. So with 17 kids going missing and no sign of what happened, it's just too much for their brains to process. And if they can't explain what happened, then at least they can find somebody to blame, which makes Justine the perfect target. Also, we can't forget that she's new to the area, so in a small town like this, she'll instantly become a suspect the minute anything goes wrong. And without any friends in the in-group, she has nobody to back her up. But it looks like Justine has more to worry about than just getting roasted in the local Facebook groups, because after the threatening phone call and somebody showing up outside her house, she needs to realize that she's actually in danger here. Now, after the meeting at the school, the officer asked if she had somewhere to go because he knew that she'd be in danger if she stayed in her own home. So instead, Justine should find somewhere else to crash for now, whether that's with friends or family or just a hotel room somewhere on the outside of town. And if that's not an option, then I'd suggest setting up motion sensing lights outside and keeping a flashlight, some pepper spray, and her phone ready at all times in case anyone stops by for another visit. Oh yeah, and if that happens again, maybe don't just blindly rush outside while leaving the front door wide open. I mean, all she managed to do with that strategy was leave herself completely exposed and open for a potential ambush. So next time she needs to stay inside, lock the doors, and call the police. That way she won't end up getting taken next. But for now, she needs to avoid going to any more public events and only go out for essentials during the off hours of the day when she's less likely to be confronted by an angry parent. She also needs to keep herself mentally sharp and stay out of trouble, which means that it's time to cut out the alcohol and cut off this affair with Paul. Yeah, but as long as she keeps a low profile and stays on her toes, she should be able to avoid getting killed by an angry mob. As she's driving Paul back to his car, Justine asks how the investigation is going, but it sounds like they've basically given up. Frustrated, she refuses to let it go and decides that it's time to take matters into her own hands. She's just about to leave when she notices Alex taking the bus on his way home from school, and ignoring the principal's warning, she decides to follow him home. Keeping her distance, she watches him go inside before ringing the doorbell, but his parents never never come to the door. Strangely, all of the windows are covered up with newspaper, and it's so bizarre that she decides to take a look in the backyard. That's when she finds a small opening in one of the windows, but when she takes a peek inside, the place looks completely abandoned. Suddenly, she notices the two parents sitting in total darkness, and as she backs away, she ends up knocking over a bunch of junk that makes a loud noise. But when she looks back inside, it's like the parents didn't hear a thing. Freaking out, she immediately calls the principal to report what happened, but he's furious at her for going anywhere near the house. Instead of sending over the police, he insists that she needs to leave them alone. But Justine is convinced that there's something strange going on. Later on that night, Justine wakes up from a terrifying nightmare to the sound of something moving around inside of her house. Lying back down, she's horrified to see some kind of freaky looking old lady hanging out on the ceiling right above her. But snapping out of it, she realizes that it was all in her head. The very next day, she decides to wait for Alex on his way home from school, but when she tries talking to him, the kid just brushes past her and storms inside. The parents still aren't coming to the door, and frustrated, she decides to wait across the street until someone arrives. Hours go by with no signs of activity, and Justine eventually slips into a vodka-induced slumber. But just then, someone opens the door. All of a sudden, the boy's mother comes outside, walking like a puppet on a string, and starts making her way over to the car. Justine's so hammered that she never notices as the woman opens the back door of her car and climbs inside, cutting off a big piece of her hair before disappearing back into the house. Okay, we just had to go playing Nancy Drew over here, didn't we? Well, here's some advice. If you walk up to a house and see windows covered up with newspaper, that's your chance to turn around and walk away. I mean, let the police investigate that shit if they have a reason. But if you still like having your body parts in all the right places, that's usually a sign that you should get the f*** out of there. Since Justine decided to snoop around anyway, she knows that something is definitely up with this kid's parents. So if the principal's not gonna act on it, she still has every reason to go straight to CPS or make an anonymous tip with the local police, but instead she decided to keep investigating on her own, and that went just about as badly as everything else in her life. Like after seeing inside for the first time, the fact that she didn't even bring a camera for the second visit was absolutely idiotic. I mean, if she had, she would have caught the kid's mother walking around like some kind of freak, giving her all the proof that she needs. When she wakes up, she's going to notice that a big clump of her hair is missing, and if she knows anything about witchcraft, she might recognize this as a sign that she's been exposed to dark magic. With certain types of witchcraft, hair provides a link to the person's essence, and any physical item that's tied to a person can be used to manipulate or harm them through different types of rituals. So now that they have a clump of her hair, she needs to start taking steps to protect herself before it's too late. This means cleansing her house with sage, sprinkling salt along the doors and windows, carrying an iron object like a nail to disrupt the magical influence, and wearing a cross or another type of protective charm. The best way to break a curse is to figure out who's doing it and why, and her recent nightmares might be the key. Alex's face looked just like the old lady on the ceiling, and it's so bizarre that it must mean something, and I'd ask the locals if anyone's seen this woman around and start trying to track her down so we can figure out what the hell she's up to. The story switches perspectives over to a man named Archer, whose son Matthew is one of the students who went missing. In between managing his construction business, he's constantly stopping by the police station to check up on the missing kids case, but the chief is starting to get frustrated that he keeps showing up. He's convinced that Justine has gotta know something, but since the police have ruled her out as a suspect, he decides to go and find out for himself. That night, after following Justine home and painting witch on her car, Archer finds himself in a dream where he sees that it's 2:17 a.m. and without making a sound, his son gets up and disappears out the front door. Chasing after him, he follows the kid through the yards and watches as he runs towards an identical copy of their own house in another part of the neighborhood. Following him in, he rushes inside and goes up to the boy's room where he finds the kid lying in bed, but all of a sudden, the lights turn on as his son is replaced by the same horrifying old woman who appeared to Justine, and he wakes up feeling confused as to what it all could mean. The next morning, he notices a radio tower off in the distance that lines up with his son's path. path, and this gives him a new idea. Grabbing a map of the neighborhood, he draws a straight line from his house to the tower, and starts looking for any clues as to where his son was going. It's a start, but he needs more to work with, so he decides to visit one of the other families and asks to take a look at the footage from their doorbell camera. Using what he sees, he marks out the exact place where their daughter stepped on the sidewalk and draws a line to show her path all the way across the neighborhood. From this, he's able to find a spot where the two paths cross, and now he's one step closer to figuring out how it all connects. As he's driven through town, he notices Justine pulling into the gas station and decides to go confront her. It immediately turns into a huge argument at the pump, but everything changes when she sees the principal running towards them like a bat out of hell. Without warning, the man charges up and grabs Justine by the throat, completely ignoring Archer as he tackles her to the ground. The father struggles to pull him away as he keeps trying to go after her, but the man eventually turns on him instead and starts choking him out with a crazed expression on his face. Alright, it looks like it's officially time for Archer and Justine to start working together. Getting jumped at the gas station by a jacked up zombie principal would be pretty horrifying for anybody, but it also presents them with the best opportunity yet to crack this case open. Because, as Archer has already noticed, Marcus here is presenting identical symptoms to the kids who went missing, which means that somehow the two events must be connected. Now, the challenge with fighting this guy is that he seems to have no regard for his own safety, or really anything else besides killing Justine. I mean, he won't stop until one of them is dead, but he's a lot more useful to us if he's alive, so we need to take him down without killing him if we can. First, Archer needs to use both his hands to grab onto Marcus's wrists, tuck his elbows tight to his side, and then pull down like he's pulling a rope towards his hips, which should be enough to break his grip. Then he'll want to use a jujitsu technique known as the Upa escape. For this, he should choose one of Marcus's arms and pin it tight against his chest. Then hook the man's foot with his leg and shoot upwards with his hips, rolling Marcus over onto his back. Now from there, it should be easy enough to pin him to the ground and keep him under control until the police arrive with some handcuffs. But if he's just too strong, then the only choice is to knock him out with a rear naked choke that cuts off the blood supply to his brain. This should leave him unconscious without causing any permanent damage, giving the others time to get him in some restraints. Then hopefully he'll snap out of it and tell them what happened, or at least they'll be able to run some tests at the hospital to see if there's a logical explanation. This would also be a great time to search the principal's house, since this is the first strange thing that's happened since the kids disappeared, so they might find something at his home that gives them some new leads. Also, now that they've found a place where the kids cross paths, they should start working outwards from that point and search for any abandoned houses, parks, storm drains, or other hiding places that are large enough for 17 kids. And once they start talking, they're going to realize that they both saw the same strange woman in their dreams. I mean, there's no way that's a coincidence. So like we mentioned before, they should start asking around to see if anyone's seen this lady, because she's obviously connected to the case. Next, the story switches over to Paul, who's going through the motions of another boring shift when he spots this sketchy-looking dude named James crossing the street. He finds him trying to break into a building through the back window, but when he calls out over the loudspeaker, the dude just takes off running in the opposite direction. Flooring it, Paul speeds around the block, swerving through traffic until he manages to cut him off. Jumping out on foot, he quickly catches up and tackles the guy to the ground, but instead of roughing him up, he politely asks if the man is okay, before walking him back out to the car. The guy swears that he doesn't have anything on him, but as soon as Paul reaches into his pocket, he ends up getting stuck with a disgusting needle. Furious, he hauls off and knocks the guy out, but that was his biggest mistake. Rushing to the glove box, he grabs the first aid kit and starts disinfecting the wound, but that's when he remembers that it was all captured on his dash cam. Realizing that he screwed up, he wakes the guy up and says that he's letting him go, but he warns him that it'll be much worse if they ever cross paths again. Feeling like his life is falling apart, he goes back to the station and starts raging in his car, but that's when he gets a "hey" text from Justine. And we already know what happens next, but after spending the night at her place, he gets home to find that his wife Donna is already back from her business trip. She can tell right away that he's been up to no good, and when he can't come up with an excuse for where he's been, she quickly figures out exactly what his ass did. Later, he's getting ready to start his next shift when he sees James making his way towards the station. Thinking that he's there to report him, Paul immediately jumps in his car and starts chasing him up the street, but nothing could ever prepare him for what's about to happen next. Alright, Paul here pretty much is the worst cop ever, and he needs to get himself under control before he's the one getting put behind bars. Like, it's pretty obvious that he's not happy in his relationship, and he's also a recovering alcoholic, so he's still going to feel the lingering effects like dopamine imbalance, sleep issues, and anxiety spikes. And without the alcohol, he's lost his favorite coping mechanism. He should really be seeking help, going to a counselor, or even just attending AA meetings like his wife suggests. But instead, he keeps bottling it all up inside and chugging tons of caffeine on top of it. So it was really only a matter of time before something like this happened, and that's why he decided to take his anger out on James. Now, if Paul was doing things by the book, then his first step would have been to call it in over the radio. Then stay back a safe distance, keep an eye on the subject, and wait for backup to arrive before making contact. That way, there would already be multiple officers on the scene. So the absolute last thing he should be doing is speeding down these busy roads where he can hit an innocent bystander at any second. The better choice would have been to let him go if he needed to, because another officer should eventually spot the suspect sooner or later, and then they can safely arrest him instead of putting civilians in harm's way. Now, once Paul finally caught up to the guy, he barely even patted him down before reaching in his pocket and getting jabbed by the needle, exposing himself to all kinds of horrific diseases that you do not want to catch. That would be bad enough as it is, but with all the pressure building up, he snapped and knocked the guy out for no reason, so now he'll be lucky to not end up in jail. If Paul had just called it in and taken it slow, then he'd never even be in this situation, but he has no idea how much worse things are about to get. James. Jumping over to James's perspective, we find him living in a tent on the edge of town. Needing some cash, he walks over through the neighborhood searching for a way to make a quick buck, but eventually decides to try his luck by stealing from one of the local businesses. But that's when he gets caught by Officer Paul. As he's walking back through the neighborhood, he comes across Alex's house and notices that the driveway is full of old newspapers. A telltale sign that the place must be abandoned. He goes around and sneaks inside through a back window, but he has no idea that this house is not empty. Making his way downstairs, he goes to the living room and starts digging around when suddenly he notices the parents' reflection on the TV screen. Spinning around, he's shocked to find them just sitting there motionless on the couch, but the strange thing is that they don't even seem to know that he's there. After trying to wake them up, he goes back to filling his pillowcase with DVDs, but that's when he hears something go bump on the second floor. Ignoring it, he goes straight to the kitchen and starts loudly clearing out the silverware, but as he's getting ready to leave, he notices the basement door and decides to take a gander inside. Making his way down the steps, he's shocked to find a bunch of freaking kids all standing around in the darkness. That's when one of them spins around and looks right at him, and terrified, he rushes back upstairs and starts putting some furniture in front of the door. This is when the adults finally get up and start coming after him, but he runs for the door and sprints down the street before they're able to catch up. Back at the pawn shop, he notices that there's a $50,000 reward for any information about the missing kids, and putting it all together, he realizes that he knows exactly where they are. Looking to cash in on the reward, he calls the police to make a report, but they insist that he come down to the police station in person. Well, sure enough, he's walking up to the building when Officer Paul starts chasing him away, so he runs back through the woods to the place where he's been hiding out. Just when it seems like he's lost him, he feels a strange presence somewhere nearby and looks over to see the creepy old woman waving him down. Horrified, he runs back to his tent and grabs a handful of syringes to defend himself, but it is not long before he hears someone opening the flap. Waiting until the very last moment, he lunges out and stabs the intruder straight in the face, but it turns out that it's actually Officer Paul. Furious, the man threatens to blow his freaking head off, but James blurts out that he actually knows where to find the missing kids. And deciding to believe him, Paul takes the guy back to his car and says to show him the house. Arriving outside of Alex's place, he leaves James in the car as he gets up to go and check it out. This time, the door opens as someone comes to let him in, but he has no idea that he's walking straight into a trap. Hours go by with no sign of Paul coming back, until finally he opens the door and comes storming up to the car, grabbing James by his feet as he drags the man inside. Alright. Well, on the bright side, I guess that $50,000 reward is still up for grabs, but now it seems like these two are about to end up in the same position. So sorry, James and Paul, but it looks like you guys just f***ed up. Alright, so let's start with my boy James. Here's some free advice. When you find yourself stealing from little kids to fuel your bad habits, that's a sure sign that you need to turn your life around like pronto. Like, I swear, the only thing worse than this town's cops are its criminals, because how do you look a police officer dead in the eye and then start committing a crime approximately 10 seconds later? That's some true NPC behavior, and somehow your decisions only got worse from there. So you pushed your luck all day until you literally got knocked out by a crazy cop. But then, instead of calling it a night, you decided to commit more crime? Seriously, man, what the hell is wrong with you? At least you were smart enough to notice the newspapers all over the yard, but that's still not a guarantee that the place was empty. I mean, there was literally a minivan in the driveway, so you might want to at least peek through the windows before climbing inside like a damn spider junkie. Like, what if a crazy person lives there? Or even worse, two crazy people and a bunch of weird little kids all standing around in a circle. Like, I know you're not the brightest light bulb in the box, but the minute you turned around and saw those two zombified homeowners sitting on the couch, that was the moment that you should have been running for the door, not sticking around to see what other surprises that this place had to offer. Now, going to the police might be the smartest thing that James ever did. It's just that it's too bad that Officer Paul was also a total dumbass here. I mean, if James was telling the truth, then something dangerous was going on there. And I know he's not the most trustworthy source, but if you believed him enough to check it out, then you also could have called for some fucking backup. You know what I mean? If you would just call for help, then the entire case would have been solved already and the people in town would finally have some answers, but now it looks like you're both about to be zombified, and that's how you know that you just fucked up. Marcus. Next, the story catches up with Principal Marcus, who's doing some grocery shopping when Justine calls him to tell him about the house, and he reluctantly agrees to invite the kids' parents for a meeting at the school. When the time comes for the appointment, he's actually super surprised when an old woman in a bright orange wig shows up at his office. The woman explains that she's Alex's Aunt Gladys and says that she's been taking care of the family since his parents came down with a bad illness. Trying to stay professional, he thanks the woman for stopping by but insists that he'll need to meet with the parents in person so that they can clear things up. The next day, the principal and his husband Terry are at home watching TV when they hear someone at the front door. Answering it, he's surprised to find that it's Aunt Gladys, and she manages to talk her way inside after giving them a long sob story about her trip across town. Things get even stranger when she asks for a bowl of water, but it's all happening so fast that Marcus here just has to go along with it. After making sure that they haven't contacted the police yet, she pulls out a small twig and wraps one of the principal's ribbons around it before slicing her palm with one of the thorns and smearing blood all over the stick. Next, she tricks Terry into getting close enough to rip out a chunk of her hair, but before Marcus can call the police, she rings a tiny bell that stops him dead in his tracks. The woman wraps Terry's hair around the branch before snapping the whole thing in half, but as soon as he does, Marcus turns on his husband and pins the man to the ground, headbutting him over and over again until his face is completely crushed. Finally, Gladys drops the twig into the bowl of water, making the principal stop what he's doing, but grabbing some of Justine's hair, she repeats the process and sends him after the teacher next. Rushing out to the door, Marcus sprints across town and makes a beeline straight for the gas station, and that's when he finally catches up with Justine and Archer from earlier in the movie. Yeah. After pinning Archer to the ground, he gets up and starts chasing Justine through the store until she's able to circle back to her car. He manages to smash the window as she fumbles with the keys, but she's finally able to get it started and drives away with the man still chasing after her. Picking himself up, Archer gets in his truck and starts chasing after the principal, but the man does not make it far before he's absolutely obliterated by a passing SUV. At the hospital, Archer tries telling the police what he's found, but of course they already think that he's crazy, so they brush him off without listening. On his way out, he finds Justine waiting for him in the lobby, and now that they're finally on the same page, the two of them decide to team up. Going to his truck, he shows her the map of the neighborhood that he's been working from, and she immediately recognizes that the lines intersect right near Alex's house. Alright, now we're finally getting somewhere. It's a little too late to save Principal Marcus, but back at the house, we got a step-by-step look at how this ritual actually works. And there are definitely some opportunities to interrupt it or fight back. Like, in order for the process to start, she needs a personal item from both targets. So as long as she doesn't have anything that belongs to you, You're immune to her spells until she does. Next, she rings a small brass bell to encourage the zombification, but the victim just stands there frozen until she gives them another command. At this point, Terry's best move would have been to just rush her and knock the bell out of her hands. Without any mind-controlled minions to back her up, she's just a frail old lady, so he could definitely have whooped her ass all over the kitchen if he'd just sprung into action before she completed the process. And if he could get his hands on the bell and ring it again, there's a chance that might break the spell. Now, after Gladys snaps the twig with both personal items, the victim won't stop until the target is dead. They're still vulnerable to damage, but Terry might not want to hurt his husband, so instead of focusing on the zombified minion, he could go straight after the source of the problem. If he was able to get away from Marcus even for just 1 second, he could knock the twig into the bowl of water and break the connection. Or focus on taking down Gladys herself, because if the mind control is bound to her will, then taking her out will leave the zombies with no motivation. Then they could try getting a brass bell and marking it with the number 7 and an upward-facing triangle, which are the opposite of the symbols on her bell, because ringing it might bring the victims back to normal. Now, as for Archer and Justine, they're headed over to investigate Alex's house, but first, they need to get prepared. They should start with the basics like some flashlights and cameras, so they can eventually get some evidence this time. And bring some actual weapons too, in case there are more of these zombies around. Their goal is to find enough evidence to get the authorities involved, not to actually handle this themselves unless they have to. But they still have no idea how bad things are really about to get. Alex. Finally, the story catches up with Alex the morning before his life changed forever. On his way home from school, his dad mentions how the boy's sick Aunt Gladys is going to be spending some time at their house. That night, Alex watches through the bedroom window as his Aunt Gladys finally arrives, noticing that she brought some kind of strange-looking plant and not much else. It's odd, and in the morning when he peeks into her room, he's horrified to see that the sick old woman is staring right back at him. After putting up with the bullies all day at school, Alex is confused when his father never comes to pick him up. Walking home on his own, he finds both of his parents sitting zombie-like at the dining room table, and he can immediately tell that something is wrong. This is when Gladys comes walking out of the kitchen, and strangely, she insists that the boy's parents are perfectly fine. Desperate, he throws a glass of water in his dad's face, but the man hardly even reacts, and Gladys orders him to go straight to his room. The next morning, the woman makes Alex take a seat at the table and gets out one of her magic wands. Telling him to watch, she proves that she can make his parents do whatever she wants and makes him swear not to tell anyone at school. One night, he hears the old woman calling from her room, and it looks like her condition is getting worse. She mentions that the hospital can't help her, but there might be a way that Alex can. She needs him to go to school and bring her an item from each of his classmates, promising that she'll finally go home if she's able to get better. At school, he waits until everyone's playing in the gym before sneaking back to the classroom and taking all of their name tags. Later that night, the boy wakes up to find the old woman shredding the name tags and dropping them all into a bowl. Dropping in a match, she rings her bell at exactly 2:17 a.m. and within a few minutes, they watch as all the kids from his class come sprinting up to the house and rush straight down to the basement. The morning after is when the whole investigation starts, but Gladys is always one step ahead and manages to avoid getting caught. Another month goes by with Alex acting like everything is fine, but then one day he comes home to find a police car sitting in front of the house. Inside, he finds Paul and James standing there motionless in the living room, and when he rushes upstairs, Aunt Gladys says that they need to get out of there first thing in the morning. As for his parents, they're standing guard outside the woman's room, and she warns Alex not to cross the line of salt that she's placed on the floor. Hours later, the boy looks out his window to see a pickup truck parked across the street. It's Justine and Archer, and they're debating what to do when somebody opens the door. As he steps into the light, Justine realizes that it's her ex-boyfriend Paul, and the man motions for them to come inside before turning around and disappearing into the shadows. Okay, yeah, I'm gonna go with a big hell no on that one, Chief. They need to scope the place out first and start by trying to peek through windows. I would even open the door and try getting a response out of Paul, because if he's just standing there silently in the dark, then they'll obviously know that something is up. The next thing they should do is call the police. Paul's been zombified for over 24 hours now, so there's a chance that they'll send a squad car to check it out, and the more variables we bring into this situation, the better. That's also why Archer should be calling the other parents and telling them what he's found, because if they can convince even a few more people to join them, then they could just round up an angry mob of meat shields and storm the house. And since Gladys definitely doesn't have any of their personal items, they'll all be immune to her spells. Now, after what just happened at the gas station, they should assume that they might be attacked again, so they should really be bringing something with them in case they have to defend themselves. They also learned that the zombies will never break focus once they lock onto a target, but there's actually a way they can use this against them. If Archer lures the minions into chasing after him first, then runs back to his truck and speeds away, they'll keep chasing him all over town, leaving Justine free to go inside and investigate while he keeps them busy. Walking inside, they find Paul just standing there in the darkness on the far side of the room. But the moment she crosses a line of salt on the floor, both Paul and James instantly fly into a murderous rage. Meanwhile, upstairs, Alex decides that he's going to try getting into the old woman's room, but as soon as he steps over the line, his parents start coming after him like a pair of mindless zombies, forcing Alex to run for his life. In the kitchen, Paul starts choking Justine against the counter, and desperate, she picks up a potato peeler and starts ripping the flesh straight off of his face. But he completely ignores the pain as if he can't even feel it, and starts lifting her up into the air with his eyes popping out of his skull. As for Archer, he can't seem to get rid of James no matter what he tries, and the guy eventually ends up tackling him straight through the basement door. Alex then cuts through the bathroom as his parents finally break in, but he's able to slip around them and make a break for the old woman's room. Thinking that she's won, Gladys comes to watch him finish the job, but upstairs, Alex completes the ritual using the woman's wig as the target, and hearing the branch snap, she realizes exactly what's about to happen. All of a sudden, all 17 of the other students come trampling up the steps and start chasing Gladys all throughout the neighborhood, crashing through one house after another until they're finally able to run her down. Oh, she tries her best to get away, yeah, but these kids are not letting it happen, and they eventually manage to catch up with her in one of the neighbors' yards. Gladys screams for mercy, while back at the house, her minions are still trying to kill Alex and Justine, but just when it looks like they're done for, the kids literally start tearing Gladys apart with their bare hands, ripping her limb from limb until the curse is finally broken. As soon as he's back in control, Archer follows the trail of destruction through the neighborhood until he finds his son and all the other kids gathered around the woman's body, while back at the house, Justine finds Alex hugging his parents in the restroom. And as for the other kids, they were all able to go back to their families, but even with the spell broken, their lives will never be the same. Weapons, man. This was a great movie, and I mean, it's like tied for Sinners as my favorite, scary movie of the year. Layers, man. This movie is deep. Multiple layers. It rewards multiple watches. They killed this one. If you guys would have done anything differently in today's episode, you gotta let me know down in the comments what that would have been. Like, did you like this movie? I gotta know. Thank you guys so much for watching. Leave a like and subscribe. Check out the How to Beat playlist for more videos just like this one. I'm the guy. We'll see you in the next video, and have a f***ing good day. Thanks again to Raid Shadow Legends for sponsoring today's video. Click on the link in the description to download the game, and I'll see you guys out there.